aku te ki a morangi, he ki te a ki runga mātaki ti a mai e te tini e te mano tū mai rangi. Haparangi te kōrero piu a matawha, hora taka pau ana papatu a nuku takahanga wai wai. Hokai wakamua, he ara pi oi, he ara hiwi hiwi ku a pau e ra reka reka kou ana e. Tuku reo, tuku mauri. Tēnei he kōrero I tuku iho mai, taku kāinga. E ki ana ko mauna tarana ki tēnā. Nā reira, te reo te Tairāwhiti, tēnā koutou mai te hau, mai ngā haume ki te tai auauru, e me I kauana, e me I maana, me I mai o haki o koutou. E tino hariko ana te ngākau, ko tai mai ki Wainganui I a tātou katoa I tēnei piringa o rea, te tini o parau, tēnā koutou. E te kaumātua I huakina tēnei hui e tautuku I ngā mihi kua mihia. Me te apiti atu ki te hunga e mawiri, te hunga e tāmea nei te paurutangi tēnei wā, I Aotearoa nei, I tā wāhi hoki mo te taumaha o tēnei kaupapa ara ko te climate change. Nā reira, koe nei te hui I hiki ake, I taku oranga, e miharo rawa kia kitea I ngā kānohi e noho ana ki konei. Ka huri, thank you for the invitation. Thank you for the introduction, Dale. E kōra ko tēnā me te tīma hoki. Ai whakarite ana whakapai tēnei hui. Sarah, thank you for opening this morning our kōrero with a really big kete, he kete wānanga, and to you all at Niwa and all the other institutions of scientists who are all around the globe working on this. So e tuku mihi ana ki a koutou hoki. Aku hoa kōrero e Dean. Pauline, matua rere ata. He wānanga, he whare wānanga me ki nunui. He ke te pāpaku tēnei mihi atu ki te hohunu, tēnā hoki koutou. I'm going to turn to, I don't have my pen and paper, but I come from that wānanga too, as Pauline mentioned, the generation of pens and papers. That's how we were trained. Can you pull up my... Thank you. So yes, Mike and I are splitting duties today with our kōrero. So I've got the cool one, the COP25. Well, let's just say it's a global perspective I'll be offering from my perspective, taking a brief look at the COP process and its purpose. And then Mike will look at the shifting our focus to local priorities here in the Tairāwhiti with actions and plans for making a community climate preparedness, I guess, discussion start here today. Kicking right off here, climate change. Oh, can you do that? Thank you. Climate change is an international issue. The impacts and the root causes are global. As you can see, the largest CO2 emitters are China, way out there. Then the US and the EU, the European Union, India, followed by Russia and Japan, by far the biggest emitters in the world. What you don't see up here are smaller nations, but it is important to note that 30% of the global total emissions is produced by all of the smaller states, so reducing our emissions in small countries does matter. While this graph shows the top emitters, the next one will show which nations actually produce the bulk of fossil fuels that make up a large percentage of total global emissions. I think as Tina has mentioned, these graphs and everything will be shared on the Facebook, so if you want to take a more detailed look, yeah, there'll be time later and any questions will follow, of course. So, fossil fuels. No, back one, sorry. Russia leads the world as the biggest fossil fuel exporter. Then Saudi Arabia, Australia and USA have equal amounts. You can notice a difference though in what it is, what fossil fuels. The black is coal, and you can see Australia's huge exporter of coal. Yeah, there's a lot of detail there. So they are closely followed by Indonesia and Canada. And so out of that top 6, you'll notice there's only a couple who are in that first graph. Many Indigenous peoples make the point, we contribute the least to global warming, but we suffer the most climate impacts. That's globally. And a worldwide strategy to reduce emissions with efforts to support those impacted most is being developed by the United Nations in a process called the Conference of Parties, or COP. This process has proved to be very slow and difficult due to a range of factors, including historic and present-day hostilities. We'll just look at some of the countries on that graph. You moved forward a bit soon. You know, there's some concern amongst people around the world. These fellas up here that are posturing in the pre-war dances, and of course the 20th century was full of conflicts. Many of those nations highlight, and many of our people have contributed efforts to help in those pakanga. Anyway, like I said, this process, the COP, has proved to be very slow and difficult due to a range of factors. Those hostilities between nations, patch protection of individual national economies, and vested interests from fossil fuel industries. It's a very labour-intensive process with thousands of diplomats, political leaders, party negotiators, advisors, technicians, scientists, and lobbyists who meet every year. There's a bit of a snapshot. That timeline is just a selection of some of the most significant things that the COP has achieved to date. And as a result of this processing being the consensus model, it often ends up with the lowest common denominator outcomes. It is often boycotted by big countries like the USA. So there's a lot of bad press with the COP, but it's a lot. It's thousands and thousands of people doing their best to try to come up with solutions. So despite all of the difficulties, an agreement was reached in Paris in 2015. And for the first time, all the nations agreed to undertake ambitious efforts to combat climate change and adapt to its effects with support for developing countries. So, climate action, go globally. There's the Paris Agreement, pūtake, to combat climate change and accelerate and intensify the actions and investments needed for a sustainable low-carbon future. It took 25 years to reach this agreement. But during this time, global emissions rose 50%. So many observers and participants feel that this process is failing. In September last year, in 2019, the UN Secretary General called for a renewed effort due to a fear of failure. And we've felt those fears very strongly from rangatahi, like the climate strikes that you guys had organised around here and around the motu, around the world. There is a huge amount of fear. Anyway, the purpose of the COP process is A, to cooperate in limiting global temperatures increasing. This requires rapid emissions reductions, and B, addressing adverse effects of unavoidable climate change. So I think that means governments need to support a really swift shift with rapid responses in all of our societies around the globe to be as prepared and ready to face many new challenges with changing climate realities. But we can't rely solely on governments because of all of those difficulties that were mentioned earlier. And a whole of society response is required. It's from industries, it's from organisations all across the board. And I know many of us wear many hats, as has been mentioned. So I'd like to think that this isn't about us putting another hat on, the climate change hat, but actually looking at all the mahi we do and how climate impacts and how what we do actually can be a solution for climate problems. And here's the cool thing, we can succeed. We have enough time this decade to turn the tide. That's what's coming out from all the scientists, that's what's coming out from the hopeful energies of all the rangatahi. We have time to turn the tide and reduce emissions. We can do it to limit the temperature rising too much, too fast. Can you do the next slide, please, Lo? Koine. So climate action at a local level, as has been mentioned. Globally, New Zealand is celebrated as a leading light on climate change because of our country's ban on issuing new offshore oil permits. And we just need to look around this room to see the people who led this. Leading communities against global oil giants is no mean feat. So to everyone here that showed the whole world keeping fossil fuels in the ground is a vital and achievable climate solution, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, round of applause. So proud. Thank you to all of you here in this room that lit fires along the Kureitanga. That was a spark that set off not only the imaginations, but the the reality that you were protecting your coastline, symbolically, ceremonially, and literally drawing a line in the sand that will never be crossed now. Kia ora. I know I shouldn't be thanking you all for your whānau supporting and protecting your own ro'e moana, but please consider this a small gesture of gratitude, aroha and appreciation for protecting the world's 4th largest EEZ and protecting our future and all our mokopuna. Nā reira, e mihi kaunua nei kia koutou ko ngā wahine o te Tairāwhiti, koutou ko koe tēnā Dale, tēnā koe, kōrua ko Michelle, tēnā koe Tina, ko Tui Vumenhoven, ko Tāwera Tāhuri, ki te au i a koe, tēnā koe sis. Ko Ani Pahuru, huriwai, aua ahi, kua rongo i tērā. Ko Tere Harrison, ko ngā tāne hoki, koutou katoa, aunties, uncles, kaumātua paeke katoa, me ngā hunga ririki, ngā tai ohima, koutou, ngā tini whanaunga o te Tairāwhiti, hurinua, tēnei te mihi kau atu. Ki ngā haue whā hoki, nei rā he wai, he paku wai, tautoko i taku kōrero, nā reira. Heki, ki te ari ki ngā hapa i ngā e ranga hia te tapu wai o taku waka nei. E rere hururu, e rere a manu, rere take i tū ai ke uai mani ai, pa eke ai re ai, a tamaki tōna tua wenua. E paku wahanga tēnā o te tihonga karakia tāwito, te kōrero i awhitaku wako Aotea kia hiki i te korokoro o te parata. He oti anō he wānanga nō tērā, ka mutu i konei me te kiwaha, me taipari wakarewa ngā waka whakaro. Can you turn the thingy? So that is, let us elevate our thinking like waka on a high tide. Let us rise together. Kia ora.
Tēnā rā tātou katoa. Me ngā mihi atu ki a koe hene kā, te kaho tō hakaro, tō mahi pāna tēnei aitua kei wainea tātou i tēnei wā. Me ngā mihi hoki atu ki a koutou, te hunga kāinga mō koutou kārangarangatanga ki a mātou i tēnei ata, kei te whakawhiri ngā whakaro, ngā kōrero i pāna te āhuarangi, nō reira koutou katoa, ngā rangatira, ngā tuahine, ngā tāne, koutou katoa, kānui te mihi atu ki a koutou. Me ngā whakaro aroha atu ki a rātou, te tini o ngā wairua e rere ana ki tērā taha, ngā whakaro aroha atu ki a rātou, ki a tātou e tō pauri ana i raro te kaho te ringo aitua. Nō reira, tēnā koutou katoa. Hineka's a hard act to follow, wouldn't you say? She's a hard act to follow, all right? And that was a beautiful kōrero. Notwithstanding that she's a hard act to follow, I follow her around all the time, and sometimes it's hard. But that's not what we're here to talk about. But anyway, here we go. So I'd like this part of our hui to be interactive. That means I want you to join in and not just sit there and necessarily listen to me rave on. Sound dangerous? Yeah? Well, let's do it then. So if you've got any questions, any comments or long statements, stories of creation, mai te kore taino ki tēnei wā, whakaputa mai. Because, just to endorse our matua, our kaihana ririata, it's within these learnings, it's within our social knowledge that we all know, that I believe the answers reside, so that we all have got pieces of the jigsaw puzzle. So don't hold back, throw them forward, please. Is anybody here from Te Whānau Apanui? Yeah? Show of hands, anybody here from Whānau Apanui? Yeah, me. Not as many as I expected, actually, but there you go. Tūhoi, anybody here from Tūhoi? Show of hands. Oh, those dusty roads up the maungas there must be holding everybody back. Tēnā koe tuahine. Rongo whakaata. Anybody here from Rongo whakaata? Alright, tēnā koutou. Oku nei Stewart Relations. Tēnā koutou. Ngaita Manuhiri. Anybody from south side of the beach? Kia ora. Okay. Ngāpui. Uh-oh. Okay, here's the big one. Ngāti Porou. Yeah, okay, awesome. Fantastic. It's lovely to be here. We've got a lot of respect for you folks. The fact that this area here has held on to our culture firmly with both of its hands and held that for us, the rest of us who got beaten up badly by the missionaries or the crown or colonised in various ways. We always look to the coast and think, you fellas are lucky that you've been hemmed in over the side of the fish by our beautiful paimaunga, because at least it's prevented as much contamination happening to you as has possibly happened to us in other areas. So we've always admired you for that. But just one more question. So by a show of hands, how many people here have a climate emergency whānau and hapu action plan? There's a few. Okay, awesome. That's really progressive of you. And that's okay, because one of the outcomes of this wānanga is to develop a template on how to achieve this Ngāti styles. And given that I'm not from Ngāti Porou, I don't have much to say about how you're going to do that and what that's going to look like. But one of the outcomes of this process, I'd imagine, Tina, is for everybody here to start developing those plans for your whānau hapuaniwi. So, but what I can contribute maybe is just some insights into our thinking, and these are just personal views on the issue. And let's start by unpacking some of the English words used in describing the climate emergency. So let's start with the term climate change itself. It doesn't sound so bad, right? Climate changes all the time, nothing to see here, move along. But climate emergency, it's like, well, hang on a minute, climate emergency, stop the bus, OMG, WTF, LOL. Now, I don't really know what that means, but that's what my kids kind of say all the time when I tell them stuff that freaks them out. OMG, W2F, Dad, LOL. So for all you young people that know what that is, well, you know what that is. So, climate emergency, that's a better word, eh? Climate emergency. It more accurately describes what's going on. So let's use that terminology going forward. Ita reo Pākehā, that is. So let's use that word. It's a climate emergency. So another word that gets talked about is mitigation. And what's that? So mitigation is the action of reducing the severity, the seriousness, or the painfulness of something. How to shrink that ngangara right back down to a manageable size. And so, tick, check. We seriously need much more of that. In fact, much, much more. We've got to be bringing the emissions down. That's got to be our focus for the next little while. So how are we doing? Domestically, 2019 has seen the growth in the government's response to climate change, including the establishment of the Climate Commission and the passing of the Zero Carbon Act, which will establish our nation's carbon budgets, targets, and monitor our progress to achieve these goals. Sounds like I'm working for the government these days, eh? But that's what it's meant to do. That's what it's meant to do. The ban on new fossil fuel, we'll get to whether or not they're doing that in a minute. The ban on new fossil fuel exploration permits mentioned by Hineka and as developed from this community and the rest of your supporters out there. So the ban on fossil fuel exploration permits and the attempts to bring the agricultural sector into the emissions trading scheme, if you don't know what that is, Google it, are moving the economy into transition. However, these measures are still only partial and require a lot more effort by the government. So while it looks like we're moving, a lot of it is just by appearance. We're not moving hard enough, fast enough for it to actually make a real difference to our lives. So, but after 10 years of relative inaction under the previous government, they really did the absolute minimum. So we're 10 years behind the rest of the world, and well, not the rest of the world, but some other countries who are more progressive. So we've got a lot of catching up to do. But to be fair, it's encouraging to note the progress that this coalition government is making on the issue. You know, that we have now made a start. That we're not going far enough, we're not going fast enough, but at least we're making a start. Notwithstanding, given the urgency, the government's efforts are far below what's required. So what is the problem with the government? Why is it so slow? Why are we suffering from this inertia, I think the flash word is? And I think there are two major factors. One of them is the influence of big business and industry and its lobbyists on the government, and that the farmers, every time the government wants to bring the farming sector into the whare to take their share of the responsibility, they back out the door. All these excuses why, we're the backbone of the economy, you cannot penalise farmers, we're carrying enough responsibility, blah, all these excuses. And they've managed to dodge their responsibility and accountability for 10 years, and they just managed to do it again this year. So that's one of the problems. The problems are the influence of big industry like the agricultural sector, the oil industry and others, and its lobbyists. They have many, many people that are paid to just be on the backs of politicians daily. So that's one problem. The other thing that's slowing our progress down is the fear of a public backlash in the polls. Governments, particularly in election year, want to only do what's considered popular. So they've got their little pollsters out there having focus group meetings, and they want to know how many people are concerned about climate change and how they should pitch their messaging for the election, and how much they can do. They can get away with before the public rises up against them. And so, obviously, we need to shift both those things. We need to shift power from the lobbyists and the agricultural and fossil fuel sector, and we need to develop more public awareness and more of a mandate for any political party to take the required action. So strong signals need to be sent to the government that dramatically increase action on the climate emergency, and those governments that do will be rewarded in the polls, and those that don't will be punished. That's the type of climate that I think that we can all do as communities, is to develop that sense. So having meetings like this, public meetings, having councils declaring climate emergencies, raising the profile, keeping community pressure on, all is effective ways of sending signals to the government that they have a mandate from the community to be doing more. The really tragic thing is that people in government have the access to the best scientists available, and they've got access to ririata and some of our karaua and tangata rongonui as well. So they've got no excuse for not knowing, and they do know. And so we've just got to tell them, you know what you need to do. Get on with it and do it. So across the world, climate emergency networks are mobilising to counter the influence of these lobby groups. And we know that this works, and we must continue with it. And there are also other actions that need to be taken, including personal action. And for example, I've taken legal action against the Crown, and I'm suing the Attorney General for not doing enough about climate and putting the future of our tamariki at risk. And people might think that I'm a bit litigation crazy at the moment, because I'm not only suing the government, I'm suing the 7 of the top country's top polluters. I've taken them to court, and I'm also lodging proceedings in the International Criminal Court for genocide and ecocide against a number of world leaders and heads of companies. And this sort of carry on kind of gets you killed in a lot of countries. And but hopefully, in this country, our relative sophistication will protect me. So I'm putting a lot of faith in that. But it's it sounds pretty funny, but it's no joke actually. Like I published this list the other day on social media, which listed by name a number of Indigenous activists who are working on these issues in their countries, who have all been murdered in the last 12 months. This is a real kind of thing. So what that's about is taking legal action against the Crown is basically asking the courts to order the government to do more. And then they're forced to do it, or they're breaking the law, and no government can break the law. So it's a way of stretching the boundaries of what they're considered is possible for them to do. And it's inoculating them against the public backlash too. And James Shaw said to me the other day, he says, oh, look, it's quite good that you've done that, because if you win, and if the courts order me to do something, I can do all the stuff I wanted to do, but was too scared to. Because now I can just go, well, the courts are making me do it. So, I mean, that's if it's successful. So it is another way of bringing pressure to bear on the government. So another concept I want to briefly mention, and we're just going to skim across the surface of a lot of these things, is you would have heard the word adaptation. So adaptation is the process of change by which an organism or a species, in this case us, humans, becomes better suited to its environment. So if the environment changes, we just change along with it, and we learn to live with the changes. However, obviously there are limits to adaptability. For example, many islands in the Pacific will be drowned by the rising sea levels, and therefore adaptation will not be an option for our whanaunga under these conditions. Therefore, adaptation is not a substitute for lowering emissions. And adaptation is probably, in some senses, can be seen as the warm and fluffy and cuddly end of the climate action, where we can go off and do all this nice sort of stuff and make ourselves feel better. But it's actually not going to stop the temperatures rising. It's just preparing for a very, very unpleasant future for our children. And so we've got to keep our eye on lowering emissions as our primary objective. But having said that, there will be change that we do need to take into account of. And so we need to anticipate it and prepare for it. And it's really lucky, we've got a speaker coming up, Mr. Chris Kumiro, who is an expert in disaster risk assessment and providing solutions, and he's going to unpack this pretty brilliant kaupapa that they've put together in Wanganui, and he's rolling out across the motu in terms of some toolkits and some models on how to prepare for disasters. The climate change or climate emergency is going to bring us a range of problems. Some of them are going to be short-term disasters, very specific events like a storm or a flood, in which there needs to be a kind of ready response capability to that. And it's going to bring longer-term problems that we're going to need to build more longer-term solutions for. But I'm really looking forward to seeing how Chris is getting on with his program. So there's a number of ways that we can anticipate and prepare for it. And I'd just like to suggest a couple of things. Number one, kia u, kia mau ki ngā kaupapa o tātou tipuna. That's the first thing. The way that we can anticipate and prepare for it is, in English, is to, what does that mean? That means stand firm to the traditional ways and the traditional knowledge systems that have been developed. Our Māori scientists, science is a process of, well, part of it, I understand, I'm not a scientist, but it's a process of longitudinal study, studying something over a period of time so you can sort of suss out what's going on. And so our knowledge systems are probably some of the longest longitudinal studies ever, because they've been going on for like thousands of years. And so there's been a process of refining, of trial and error. And more importantly, as our matua said, the passing on orally of this information down through the generations. So for those of our tohunga Māori that are in the room and looking around, I can see quite a number of you who have who have been lucky enough to have this information passed down by our nannies and grandpas. We've really got to honour them, and we've got to ask them to share that knowledge with us. So that's one thing. Kia u, kia mau ki ngā kaupapa o tātou tipuna. The second principle, I think, is mahitahi. that we've got to work together to this. We will not find individual solutions to systemic global problems. So it's not just about changing the light bulbs on you. We've got to work together. And all of us in this room, aha ko ngā raruraru o ngā wāhu mua, and we've got plenty of that. I know I have. But, we've got to get over it. And we're facing an emergency. And so we've got to be prepared to put aside the little things and concentrate on the big things. So work together. The third principle I'd say is ka tika a muri, ka tika a mua. So those who are in leadership positions have to be doing their bit. Could be freeing up resources, could be putting focus, could be enabling things. And those of us who are in supportive roles to leadership, that we should support our leaders. We should support our leaders who are doing the right things, and I know a lot of them are. We've got to support our Māori scientists, and like Ririata said, we've got to honour and respect our Pākehā scientists as well, and honour them and respect them and support them as well, particularly the ones that are doing the right things. It's not all of them are. And the fourth one I'd say is mana Māori motuhake, is that you can't wait for the government to come riding over the hill on its white horse to save us. We've got to pick up this challenge and take it with both of our hands and work together collectively to find solutions. So those would be just some thoughts about that. Now, in the past, I've heard one of our tangata rongonui, James Renwick, who's going to be appearing magically through the irirangi bit later on. He says that we need to have lots of conversations about what needs to happen in the relation to climate. And it's so true. We've got urupa that are right down on the ocean where we're still burying our beloved family members in those urupa that are going to be inundated by seawater very soon. And so it's not just a simple case of rocking down there to hahu our koiwi and take them off to another urupa somewhere. Those are long conversations. There's some people that are going to go, you take my tupuna out of that hole, boy, and you better be ready to take its place. Because that's the kaupapa. It's like, okay. in which case we've got choices, We can, if you feel like that, you can leave them there and they can go to Tangaroa. Ka pai, where I'm from, in the Whangaroa, we take our koiwi down into ana that are underneath deep into the cliffs underwater. You can only get underwater access to them. And I know Kaitahu, they take their koiwi out onto the reefs and they turn them into pounamu. Well, I think that's how it goes. I do not speak for other iwi, but so there's all these other things. But we need to have conversations, and some of these conversations are long conversations, so we need to start soon. Just while we're on long conversation, how are we going for time? Wrap it up? So, I would suggest that there are a number of other priority issues beyond the urgency of mitigation, which include habitation security. Are we living in a safe place? Is the tide likely to sweep away these homes? Do we build new homes in these areas, or do we zone them as not suitable? Water security. Nā te mea, horekau he wai, ka mate noa. 3 days for max. You haven't got water, you're dead. That's how important it is. You've got 3 days. Without it, you're dead. And we're going to have to look after our water. Mike Joy's going to tell us all about that soon. We're looking forward to that. Kai security. Rite tonu te wai. 3 weeks, no kai, ka mate noa. So we need kai security, energy security. We need our own energy. We need to tap into te hihiri mai te rā. Whanaungatanga, that's a form of energy. And from that we get a sense of shared security. No one's safe unless we're all safe. So you can't just run off and set your own private little Idaho up in the hills and expect to be all right. Because if the lights go out down in the valley, all the kids are going to be coming up with their gadgets going, Uncle, hook me up. And so, and so everybody needs to be secure, not just your own personal solutions. So how's it going to affect us? It's going to affect us geographically in terms of where we live. It's going to affect us socially, how we organise. It's going to affect us politically. You know, they're talking about the downfall of civilization. Whole governments are going to fall. Destabilisation of economies, all the big ticket items. Culturally, it's going to suffer. You know, our Pacific Island people, if they lose their land, and if you feel like you're tangata whenua, what do you do when you have no whenua? He tangata, he tangata no? Well, what does that mean? What are the implications? So what do we do? Who's going to do it? Where's it going to happen? How's it going to happen? And what's the order in which we need to do stuff? These are all the planning issues that need to be rolled out. So we're going to need information, more information. We're going to need skills. We're going to need resources, and we're going to require land. And then we're going to have to figure out now, what are the obstacles? If we have to relocate Gisborne, which we'll have to do within time because it's going to flood here, up somewhere else, where is that somewhere else? And who controls that somewhere else? Is it the conservation land? So we need to say to the government, you're going to have to be prepared to get out of the way. We're not asking you for new things. We're just saying remove the obstacles for us re-establishing our communities in other places. Finally, I'd like to mention timeframes. These matters are urgent and should be afforded the highest priority. We need to accelerate our responses, and what we do over the next 5 years is absolutely crucial. We don't have time, to waffle on ake tonu atu. We've got to really roll up our sleeves and get stuck on this. So, how many people here are scared? Do you feel some fear in regard to climate change? Show of hands. And that's perfectly normal. I do. At times I sort of think of my kids and I think, what's it going to be like for my poor kids? But then I think, well, what's the opposite of fear? And we know what the answer to that is. The opposite of fear is courage. We know that. And so we just, put aside the fear and lift up your spirits and your heart and find the courage to address these things head on. We might be a little bit disorganised when it comes to all of this. And we know, we're not stupid, we know what the opposite or the answer to disorganisation is organisation. We need to come together and to organise and to work out our plans and to put our plans into motion. So in action. All of this means nothing if it's not translated into action. So we've got to turn our plans into practical steps in moving forward. Now, what I'd like to say is that all of this might seem a little bit simplistic, but I think those are starting point type issues. But this hui cannot end here. And I think the challenge for us around the motu, we're going to be rolling out assistance to various regions to set up ongoing processes. So I'm fully trusting that our wahine toa will be picking up, will be rolling out another hui within 4 weeks to start unpacking these issues and actually building the answers in detail. And I think that's what we should. We shouldn't just leave it hanging like we've been to another conference on climate change and then we went home and life went on. We've actually got to commit to a process of a continual process, a revolutionary process without end, actually. A revolutionary process without end, where we change our systems, where we start transitioning them. We don't want a big change that's going to smack it into a building. We want a change that we can manage. So let's start it now. And I think that's the challenge in front of us. And so we're going to be around to support that. We're looking at developing some systems, including funding and resources and smart people to feed into that process all around the motu. That's a job that I've been given to do over the next 2 years, is to figure out how do we empower communities to do this. And so we're not coming. Nobody is going to come in from the outside with all the answers. We believe that you have the answers here. It's just that processes and support and assistance to you finding your solutions is something that we're very, very keen on supporting. Nō reira, there's nothing like a woman to shut a man up. Nō reira, kanui tēnei. Kia hariru te ato ringai awhi pono, awhi taku te nana, awe, awe, awe te aroha ki a rātou ma, awe te aro, nā u whakaroto re. Nō reira, tēnā koutou katoa e hakarongo mai ki tēnei kōrero urere. Ngā mihi whānui atu ki a koutou huri no te whare, tēnā koutou katoa.